Hey, what's going on, everybody? Hope you're all well, wherever you may be in this wide world of ours. Just had a bowl of homemade chili and a downed Monster Energy drink, so I figured it's time to do a little reviewing of the latest Twin Peaks episode. That is episode 14 of season 3, Twin Peaks: The Return. And yeah, just before I start, compare this episode to last episode, and maybe you'll understand what I mean when I had some complaints about filler. There was some great stuff going on in this episode that could have easily been addressed in previous episodes that could have built up to, stuff that just kind of came out of nowhere that could have had a little bit build up, especially with Sarah Palmer. Come on. They could have been teasing stuff like that throughout instead of just having this kind of weird, one-off things every once in a while that, just showed her as kind of being a bit off and a bit kooky, but she's always been kind of weird. Remember, her daughter described her as being a bit spooky. So, yeah, like I said, this one was chock full of great material, some great reveals, some great background on the lore, especially at the start where we'll deal with Albert discussing the early case. And yeah, this is the kind of stuff that I would like them to weave in as much as possible. This, we're coming down to the wire. We got, I think, 18 episodes this season, so we got 4 more to go, which gives plenty of time, obviously, to start doing that, since we've really started to narrow down our search in different locales. So it's all coming together, but like I said, it does annoy me at times when material is kind of thrown in there, even if it is resolved to some degree or for some reason. Eventually, it doesn't necessarily mean that it had merit to be included in the first place. But I'll revisit that, after the end of the season, and maybe I'll do a kind of a season overview and what I would have removed, how I would have maybe changed a few things, and so on and so forth, just as a little bit of a Monday morning quarterback type of thing. But let's get started, because, yeah, this was a great episode, very satisfying. We start off with Gordon giving Lucy a call over at the Twin Peaks Sheriff Department, and talks to her a little bit. It must be the first time he's contacted her since since the last time he was there, or shortly after Cooper vanished. And little chit chat, and then gets sent over to Sheriff Frank Truman, who he doesn't realize that Harry is not there at the working at his full capacity, and which is kind of funny because I think the actor, was it Michael Ontkean or Ontkean? Basically, from what I read, he went to Hawaii or moved to Hawaii and and then for some reason refused, doesn't want to leave the island to film or anything like that. So it was kind of funny. You got the director, the creative mind, where's Harry at? It's like kind of almost breaking the fourth wall. It's like, yeah, where exactly the hell is he at? I'd just like to see what he looks like these days, if he's, kept up his health, and the actor himself is doing good, because he was, he's a memorable character. So anyway, so we get a little bit of that information. Gordon realizes that they're investigating into some Laura Palmer stuff. So the coincidences are starting to become less like coincidences, and starting to all feel like they're all kind of moving towards one ultimate I guess, event, if you will. And so he's got all that he pretty much needs to know there, and we get over to Albert and Agent Preston, and they're basically, Albert's given her the rundown on the first case, I guess you could say, for Washington State, at least that they believe this was part of this chain of events that came to be after the formation of their little FBI paranormal task force, whatever you want to call it, after the end of Project Blue Book. So a murder was being investigated by not only Gordon Cole, but also Philip Jeffries. So a little bit younger in the day, so maybe they had been what Cooper was age-wise when he first was in Pittsburgh or whatever, when all that went down, young agents. And they were looking for a murder suspect and go to a hotel in Olympia, like I said, which is the capital of Washington. And they enter after hearing a gunshot, they enter the room, or the hotel room, and there's a woman lying on the floor, bleeding out from a bullet wound to the stomach. And she basically, her last words are, "I'm like the blue rose," which is quite an interesting thing to say. And then she dies and vanishes, which we have seen happen quite a bit. The question we want to ask is, what was she wearing a ring? That would have been Agent Preston, if she knew if the link with that green ring with the owl symbol on it. But the person that shot her was also the same woman. And there is no known records to show that there were biological identical twins. So yeah, Lois Duffy, the lady, apparently, I'm assuming, shot her doppelganger. And then while awaiting trial, which she was not aware of the murder, her being the one that actually committed the murder, it must have been her double, her evil doppelganger. She commits suicide. So yeah, that's kind of the opening case to this whole chain of events, at least within the state of Washington. So that's pretty interesting. It fits a lot of the phenomena that we'd seen, at least through the up till now, from the beginning of the show. Disappearances of people after death, usually showing up in the lodge right after, with no trace of the body. We saw that with old Ray Monroe, and we saw that with Douglas Jones. So both of them with the ring on. So the ring must have played a part. And we get to the definition of the blue rose, and that is that basically they consider the blue rose some things that aren't natural, that aren't naturally occurring, or which to me is kind of, I don't know if I really like that definition. I think I would be more along the lines of natural phenomenon that cannot be explained, because this whole forces against, combating against each other, of light and dark or whatever, not really good and evil, but the essence of fear and the essence of love and compassion or whatever, combining each other. They seem very organic. These emotions are very organic, obviously. And so, yeah, I understand it seems more of like a thing for something paranormal that can't be explained, but remember that these lodges, at least the White Lodge, is one that's supposed to house the beings that, look over, or oversee mankind in the natural world and stuff. So that you think they're some part of natural existence and not this kind of artificial force or being or entity that acts upon things but isn't part of nature itself. I didn't really like the definition of the blue rose in that case, but that's just me. But she does make a point when she mentions that the being was conjured. And this actually, remember we had the Tibetan Buddhism from the original show, and the black magic, kind of death worshipping type of Tulpas, or whatever they wanted to call these, like shamans that cultivated evil for the sake of evil. Well, she says that this is kind of like a Tulpa, which is spelled Tulpa, which is basically a being that is manifested or conjured up from the thoughts of separate individuals. And it says it's described as bodies that were created from one person's mind in order to travel to spiritual realms, which, and we can get into that, but that's a really good choice of word to wrap that whole up, or that whole phenomenon up of that doppelganger and stuff. because that's almost what kind of we've seen these beings like Bob that travel into from the spiritual world into the physical world. But it's a topic that could dedicate its own video to. So in that case, I kind of understand that an unnatural thing, because it was created through maybe some kind of some shamanistic or animist, and not animist, I guess I would say shamanistic form of magic or something, which we know magic is plays a part in all of this. So if that was what you meant by not a natural occurring event, then that makes sense. I mean, it takes human consciousness and desire and the will of the mind and whatnot to conjure things up. That things like this, and they wouldn't just naturally occur. Like as a phenomenon in and of itself without the will or desire of the individuals. So okay, so I guess I can kind of see where she's coming from with that definition, but I don't know. It's still pretty cool. Either way, however you would like to define it. Then, of course, after we get a serious moment with some killer info getting put in there, poor Gordon is at the mercy of the mad window wiper. It was pretty funny. Like I almost thought it was going to be a guy with a big shaggy beard, dirtied faced out there tormenting Gordon from the lodge. Anyway, so Diane shows up and they ask her about the last night she saw Dale, or whom we assume was the good Dale, which we know it wasn't, that he indeed mentioned Major Briggs. They let her know that Major Briggs did not die back then, but indeed died within the past week or so, however long it took him to get to the coroner's office to examine the body, and that there was a ring inside, and it was a ring from Janie E. to Dudley. And lo and behold, surprise, surprise, this Janie E. is Diane's half-sister. So we now have a way to pinpoint Janie and Dougie Cooper, so I wouldn't be surprised if the next episode we have a reunion with Gordon, Albert, Diane, and good Cooper. Perhaps Evil Dale is on his way to Vegas as well. So yeah, see, something like that, could have been thrown in, in a previous episode or something, but it's not like the episode before the last one, so I can be a bit forgiving on that, but just storyline stuff like that, I'd rather focus on. So not trying to nitpick too much about the previous episode, but it's a good reveal, and we finally have our logical jump to get to Las Vegas and find the semi-catatonic, Rain Man-esque Dougie Cooper. So hopefully, yeah, we'll have that all taken care of in the next episode. So Diane leaves, and Gordon fills them in on the fact that they're doing some research into the old Laura Palmer case over in Twin Peaks involving not one, but two Coopers, which, of course, we know is basically what they're kind of come to the point of knowing, that the guy that was in the cell that they interviewed was not the Dale of old, at least the good Dale that went to Twin Peaks looking to solve the case. All right, and then, of course, Gordon mentions a Monica Bellucci dream, so I'm assuming he's had more than one dream. And believe me, if I had dreams about her, they wouldn't be nearly as wholesome, I can tell you that much. She's a good-looking lady, I tell you. But, of course, the dream he had is profound and ties into the movie, or the prequel movie, which is pretty cool. So it's almost like you get this kind of weird kind of loop of consciousness or whatnot, because basically she's telling Gordon what Philip Jeffries was telling Gordon after he described his experience of overseeing the meeting of some of the denizens of the Black Lodge, including the midget, Bob, the old lady and her grandson, who go by Trefont or, or Tremont. I'm sorry, Tremont or Chalfont. And it says, we live within a dream. It's basically said, in a dream. We live within a dream. And this, Monica Bellucci, as herself in the dream, is saying, yes, it's like, we're it's like a dreamer who dreams, things and then lives within the dream, but who is the dreamer? And of course, they say that Cooper is there, but he wasn't able to see his face, which for us would mean, couldn't identify which Cooper was present. Was it the evil one or the good one? So then we get the old Cole, or Gordon Cole, in this spot where both Cooper was sitting at one point when he tells him about that he had the dream that he had about some significant thing was going to happen at the office, looking at at young Gordon. And it's cool that they tied some of this in, especially the comment that Jeffries made where he points at Dale and says, who do you think this is here? Because in the, it would take about a little bit of a leap to connect the end of season 2 with this moment in the prequel where he is saying, this is not the real, this is Dale is, not necessarily the Dale you think he is. So I think this was, had to have been a device or invention that came because of this new series, and that there was no previous connection. So it's almost like he's revisiting these events that took place and gleaning new things from them, from stuff Jeffries said that at the time he, did not make, as much sense as now, as he's had time to reflect and have these dreams like he had with the one recently. Because remember, Jeffries was there, but he wasn't there. So Jeffries has been kind of moving through these different spaces, and in the extended version, or the deleted scenes, we actually see him, it's like he almost like vanishes. It's, in front of these people, and he's like kind of screaming out in pain or kind of like in terror. So there's like this burn spot on the wall behind him. So yeah, it was cool that they were able to weave that scene, because it's pretty profound, because Jeffries comes back and basically is, has seen all this crazy shit and is trying to relay it to Gordon, but it's been, completely messing with his mind, because, he's almost at the point of a mental breakdown from what he's experienced and what he's discovered, investigating what's been going on. I think it was in Seattle at the time. So I'm assuming that was, so we've got at least 3, possibly 4 women dead because of the lodge. At least the gal that hung herself after being accused of murder. Judy may or may not be alive, the one that Jeffries was going to see to find out more about the Black Lodge denizens. And then we've got, Teresa Banks and Laura Palmer, of course, Madeline Ferguson. But so there may be more. We'll have to continue on and see what happens. All right, over at the Twin Peaks Sheriff's Office, their a scumbag employee there gets busted because he's been up to no good, and they lock him up. And they take a little road trip over to Jack Rabbit's palace. And in previous seasons, they'd used some California, I think, outdoorsy areas to do some of the shooting of the exterior shots in the woods. But this is all Pacific Northwest, I can tell you. I used to go camping as a kid in forests just like that. And believe me, if you have an imagination as a little kid in kind of places like that, I mean, your imagination runs wild. It definitely is a very special place. I can definitely tell from being there and not being too far from areas like that where I live right now. So yeah, definitely has that kind of, you definitely feel that awe and almost kind of a spiritual weight of places like that when you're out in nature, and old forests like that when you're kind of out on your own and with just your imagination. So it was pretty cool just to see all that film. So yeah, it's definitely a beautiful country, no doubt about it. And so yeah, this part was pretty cool. I wasn't expecting the end result, so that was definitely a surprise. So they come to a place which is all kind of fogged in, or some smoke or something like that. and we see, a kind of a hollow dish or something like that with some like liquid or material in it, and we see a woman, or a body, I should say, at least, lying on her side, and lo and behold, it's the gal from that tower that Cooper visited before he was passed through that electrical current or outlet into the world, and the lady that basically had like her eyes removed or something was up with her face. Remember, she kind of fell off into nothingness, and then we saw Major Briggs's disembodied head floating by and saying, Blue Rose. So this is where she ended up, assuming at this specific time and place. So pretty interesting, because remember, she was in that same space that Agent Cooper was, and now she is manifested in the real world. So the significance of this is yet to be seen, but definitely it was pretty cool, because we're basically now we have these beings that have crossed over into the physical realm, or the third dimension, if you will, that were previously only in this kind of extra dimensional space, and we didn't know if they were, what their significance of them being there was, other than we recognized the giant and whatnot. So yeah, it's going to be cool to see what role she has to play as the episodes move towards the end of the show. All right, so they find the spot just in time, according to the coordinates and whatnot they were given, and like with Gordon over in South Dakota, a portal basically opens up, a vortex opens up, except for this one leads to what I believe, and I think this may confirm it, is the White Lodge. So Major Briggs basically sent them coordinates on how to find the White Lodge, and given this woman they find is in this spot, I have a feeling that she is definitely on the good side of all of this. But yeah, Andy, I think I was sitting there, I'm like, then, oh, Andy gets pulled up in there. I was like, yeah, it's like Andy's got that weird kind of idiot savant kind of weirdness about him, where he can come across as this kind of being a complete doofus, but then just at the right moment, he figures it out, like he did with the map, or to be able to find where the lodge is in the second season. So I thought it was kind of appropriate that he would be the one that was sent up there to be in contact with the denizens of the White Lodge. And so essentially he basically gets kind of the giant is there, and the giant says that he's the fireman, and which sounds kind of funny when he says it, but I mean, fire is kind of it seems like it's akin to the soul, to magic. And so a fireman, obviously someone that's an expert at dealing with the forces of fire, as in the case of a literal fireman, of being able to control and contain them and put them out. But I think it's kind of a roundabout way of someone that's an expert in dealing with this force, or someone, or someone that knows that can wield this force. That's what my kind of interpretation of him referring to himself as the fireman. So essentially, Andy's kind of getting up to speed with a lot of the stuff that the more powerful beings are aware of. We see that monster that was in the glass cage, or I guess you call it cage box, that attacked and killed the two in the original or opening episode. Followed by which I believe is the same creature or similar creature that vomited forth the eggs and that kind of that protoplasm that the essence of Bob came out in. So I think those two are tied together. I think there might be the same being in those two instances. But basically, Andy gets a kind of a preview of all of the stuff that's happening. We see the woodsman. We see Laura. We see the woman that with the missing eyes. We see the two faces of Dale split into their two unique halves. So Andy's aware of pretty much, like, there's one thing with Lucy there too, is kind of funny. I'm not sure what the significance of that was, but the other guys are kind of wandering about and they don't remember, which is kind of what happened to Major Briggs when he came back from the White Lodge. I mean, most of the stuff was kind of, even Hawk couldn't remember, which was kind of interesting. Something happened. And then Andy comes back, purposeful with a message for the guys from returning from talking with the giant. Whoever this lady is, she's very important, and there are people that want her dead, so they need to keep her safe. And of course, the rest of the guys aren't know what really happens. Like, yeah, all right, cool, that works. So we'll have to find out what her purpose is, what her purpose serves, because she was trying to help Dale at that one point, and then so I'm curious if whatever that thing was banging on the outside of that metal tower was like trying to find them, and she was trying to be kept silent from it. Could be that thing, that thing that vomited out all those eggs of those hybrid monsters, those frog insect things that was wandering, that was in that glass cube in that photo setup. That may be what was actually looking to kill her. So will be interesting if that connects with something that we see later on in this episode. So Chad's locked down there with that gal and another individual who looks really messed up. And my guess, at least from what we scene we see here later on with the two gals talking in the bar, I think this is the guy that Audrey has been looking for. That she was, talking to Charlie that they were going to go looking for this guy. I think that is the guy. If I'm wrong, point it out, but I think that's who that she's, worrying about and who's been looking for, is that guy that looks, I don't know, looks a little worse for wear. He looks messed up. And Chad gets to deal with all the weird noise making. Hopefully that won't drive him insane. All right, so James is working as a security guard, and he's got a buddy there from the UK, from the East End, who's got a kind of a green gardener's glove. And long story short, this guy, since it's James' birthday, and he's going to let him know in the story, this guy basically got teleported up to the place where Andy was, talked to the giant. The giant kind of gave him these clues about this glove, and apparently, all of it came true. And then when he has this glove on, apparently he can't take it off, but I don't know if it gives him like superpowers to be able to it's like almost like crush things with his hand, like his hand's like just, like a hammer or something, like a sledgehammer. So yeah, that was kind of a interesting little story there. I think that would have been better put before Andy went there, and then the giant introduced himself as the fireman. I think that would have kind of created a little bit more suspense, so we know after the fact that who he's referring to. And then James goes down to look at the furnace, and am I the only one that immediately thought of Friday or of Nightmare on Elm Street, and like Freddy Krueger was going to come around the corner and cut James to ribbons? That's what all that reminded me of when shooting that scene right there. All right, this scene is kind of a holy shit, what the fuck type scene, but it connects into a couple different things. But yes, apparently Sarah Palmer has I don't know, maybe she's permitted, because obviously as the scene goes, you've got this pervert guy that wants to, is sexually harassing her, and she's, not exactly the greatest looking gal at this age, and pisses her off, and she basically removes her face, at least, aside, and then there's something within it, some other entity that, I'm assuming is a lodge entity, and ends up killing the guy, and then she doesn't realize afterwards what happened. But I didn't we see Laura do the same thing in when she met up with Cooper in the lodge, the first opening episodes, episode 1 and 2. At the premiere, she pulled her face aside for a second, then put it back, and her mother does the same thing. But whatever's inside of the mother, at least it's there, is not on the side of good. So I'm wondering if, that's Laura's mother. So And she's the one that's really had a lot of that psychic connection and spiritual and supernatural connection, that if something very powerful from the lodge has inhabited her, unbeknownst to her, and that may end up posing quite a dangerous situation later on, because we know that we heard the kind of that electric hum in the back room when she was at watching the television boxing thing, which the commenter pointed out that that's probably Dougie Cooper's boss, boxing. I wouldn't be surprised if that was supposed to be footage of him. But also when Hawk answered, or she answered the door and Hawk was there, we heard that kind of something going on in the back. So I'm wondering, if she's got a doppelganger running free in a similar manner that that gal in Olympia did, if we have another situation like that. Because Sarah, after this guy is lying dead on the floor, doesn't have a clue what's going on, and then all of a sudden she kind of reverts back. It's like what we saw with like Leland and Bob, where it was almost like Leland was there, and then all of a sudden Bob takes over and then hops back and Leland's back, and so it's almost like another situation where she's been possessed or given into the power of one of the lodge entities, possibly because of her grief, made her a easy target for their evil ways. So yeah, after that we're at the Roadhouse, and this gal's given this description of this Billy guy, who I think, like I said, I think is the guy that's in jail currently with Chad, and then that mystery lady, because this is the daughter of the guy that Charlie called to talk to, that and he wouldn't pass on any of the information to Audrey. So that's the connection I'm making. I think the guy currently, because he's talking about that blood gushing out of him, his nose and mouth, and I think that's the same guy that's in the prison cell right now. Could be wrong, could be somebody completely different, but that was the connection I made through that conversation those two have, and the image of that guy earlier. Something was seriously wrong with that dude. But yeah, so that ends up the episode. Got another kind of indie rock band, Lizzie or something. I mean, I'm not a real big fan of that kind of music, but it wasn't bad. It was better than crap that they play on nowadays. At least had a little bit of heart and soul to it. Winds the episode down. A solid episode, very good all around. This is the kind of stuff I hold them to as far as the standard and quality go. This is what we should be expecting from them, because it's there's so much there to work with. And if you look at the credits, you'll see that there's an actress, Erica Anon or whatever, and plays the Experiment. And remember, the Experiment is the being that killed the two lovebirds making out on the couch, and also vomited forth that protoplasm or whatever that contained the eggs and the essence of Bob. So the Experiment is what it's referring to, is that that kind of demonic abomination type of being. I'm not sure if it was something that was created from the explosion of the nuclear test, brought this thing into being, and that's why it's called the Experiment, or it's just a cryptic name for it. So yeah, that's, if you ever see the Experiment, that's what's being referred to. That thing that escaped the glass box and killed the two, and then, like I said, brought Bob's into the world. So I think there may be a connection with the Experiment and Sarah Palmer, possibly. I think, or that the Experiment is what is coming to try and get the woman that they found, that Andy brought to the sheriff's station. I think the Experiment has something to do with that. I think the Experiment was trying to get Dale as well, but he managed to escape, and the two lovebirds that making out on the couch are the ones that had to deal with that monstrosity. But I think that will be that will have something that whatever that being is, I think has something to do with the end game of everything. But I think, like I said, I think it has something. Sarah Palmer's let's just say she's been compromised by some kind of entity or being, because that was some pretty heavy shit that went on there. Especially for her to not be in the very much of anything going on, then all of a sudden we see that, and we see it's something similar that her daughter did. Because I'm certain that she removed her face in a similar manner and then put it back before she was ripped away from Cooper in the beginning of this season. So a lot of stuff to think about, but that wasn't, like I said, great episode. I look forward to the next episode. Hopefully it's we'll get a homecoming or a meeting, or like I said, I guess homecoming or reunion or whatever with Dale Cooper and Gordon and crew, and they'll wake him up to his old self before it's too late. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed that episode. This is a little bit of a long review, but there was a lot to talk about, so a lot of stuff to ponder. And I'll be back with you guys when episode 15 is all said and done, and I'm ready to review it. And until then, folks, take it easy.